Welcome. This video is documenting the prediction that famous singer-songwriter Paul Simon of Simon and Garfunkel will slip and fall and severely injure his head on December 19th, 2025. The post date on the social media platform that you are watching this video on proves that this prediction is being made ahead of time, as does this time-stamped email and forensic notes PDF document. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. All right, welcome. This video is predicting that famous singer-songwriter Paul Simon of Simon and Garfunkel will slip and fall and severely injure his head on December 19th, 2025. And I'll be talking again, as usual, about many different prophetic signs that God has provided that confirm this analysis, and this being one of them that will be explained in this video, because every video needs to be titled something, but the way the big picture of signs works is that it's an interconnected web, and so there'll be much more talked about than simply the end of LeBron James's record streak that just occurred. But it's profound, as I'll explain. So let's get into it. The date here confirms that this email thread was composed prior to the prediction. It was first recognized. What we will talk about in this video was recognized on December 6th. Okay, a full 13 days before December 19th. All right, December 6th. So God uses records in general for prophetic signs. Extremes and records. God uses LeBron James for prophetic signs. God has used LeBron James records for prophetic signs. This isn't the only record of LeBron James's that God has used. This being the most recent example. On December 4th, 2025, let me just explain a couple of things, just the very basics. LeBron James is considered to be one of the two GOATs, greatest of all time, of basketball. And this hints at the GOAT Antichrist, who is the basketball president, who wore number 23 in high school basketball in Hawaii, and LeBron James, and this is why LeBron James wears number 23. Also, LeBron James is from Cleveland. And he famously played for Cleveland and broke the supposed Cleveland sports curse in dramatic fashion when he returned to Cleveland after having not been in Cleveland. So he was born in Cleveland, is from Cleveland, and then was drafted by Cleveland, but then decided in the big decision, the ESPN episode special on that decision, he decided to leave Cleveland in order to pursue a championship, which he successfully did with Miami. He became the villain of the NBA for betraying the fans of Cleveland. But then, to redeem himself, he returned to Cleveland after a hiatus of being away from Cleveland. President Cleveland was the only president to serve non-consecutive terms before President Trump. President Cleveland skipped the 23rd presidency, which is why LeBron James wore number 23 for Cleveland. And then, like President Cleveland, was away and then returned. This hints at the being away and returning of the president who will also serve non-consecutive terms and wore number 23 in high school basketball. Okay, so God used LeBron James's records for prophetic signs, and by the way, that's a parallel with the other GOAT, who also had a hiatus. He retired for 1 year in between his two sets of 3 NBA championships. He also wore number 23, and that GOAT, Michael Jordan, played for Chicago And the basketball president is from Chicago. When Michael Jordan retired, he wore jersey number 45 for the Chicago White Sox, which hinted at the 45th president and his presidencies in between the presidencies of Barack Obama. Okay, so let's get into this one though. So December 4th, 2025 was the day James's record-setting streak of consecutive games played without scoring under 10 statistical points came to an end. It was symbolic of the end times, in the beginning of the end times in Bible prophecy. That includes the period of the Antichrist, the basketball president. Here are the notes of the insights as they came. So I didn't have time, as is typical these days, to write out a proper write-up. So I'm just going to read the notes as they came, the insights as they came that I took or recorded in note format. And they build on each other. So let's go through it all together, but stay tuned and follow carefully because it'll get, like always, more and more interesting because the insights build on each other. So this was on December 4th, exactly 126 months after June 4th, 2015. 126 is extremely prophetic here because in Bible prophecy, a period of 1,260 days is mentioned 7 times as being symbolic of the period of the Antichrist. So that's hinted at with 126 months. 1,260 days is hinted at with 126 months. Okay, and we have this 4th of the month, this pattern that God has established, which is why this connection was immediately recognized, because of this pattern of God using the 4th of the month to point to the 44th president, who was also born on the 4th of the month, the 4th of August. And August, the 8th month, is 4 plus 4. Well, anyway, so this record for LeBron James came to an end, and the end times is symbolized by, and again, the end of the record streak symbolized the end times, and the end times is symbolized by the number 126. So this record streak came to an end exactly 126 months after another basketball sign involving LeBron James on June 4th, 2015, which was Game 1 of the NBA Finals, after LeBron James returned to Cleveland in his pursuit of a championship for Cleveland. Okay, so this Game 1 of the Finals, the story of the game, and God uses firsts for prophetic signs. So this would be the first NBA Finals game with LeBron James. With Cleveland, that is. And so this first game was known for how it was accused in the media or speculated in the media that the other opponent team, the Golden Gate Bridge team, the San Francisco team, the Golden Gate State Warriors. And the Golden Gate Bridge hints at Obama because it is 90 feet wide and 1.7 miles long, and that hints at the president from 09 to 17. Okay, so, and 44 hints at the 44th president. Cleveland, as I've now explained, hints at 23, and God pairs 9, 23, and 44 to confirm the signs and connections. And this is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter as the Bible says is required. And this is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination, and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic signs. And one simple way in which God would provide a second witness for us is through pairing certain numbers together, if we think about it. And those numbers are 9, 23, and 44. And I know this because I've been studying his big picture of science patterns and connections from morning until night for more than full-time hours for more than 7 years. That said, this understanding came early on in the process in 2020 because that's because it was necessary for this understanding, because these are the building blocks of the big picture of science, the pairings of these numbers. Okay? The reason is the 44th president was inaugurated in 2009, and he was the basketball president that wore number 23. Okay, so again, number 23, LeBron James for Cleveland, which since at 23 also, scored 44 points in this game. And it was said that the opponents let him score the 44 points, which LeBron James took issue with and denied that. But thinking about it, it could be a defensive strategy to focus on the defense of the other players instead of LeBron James and let him score some points. Anyway, so he scored 44. Oh, and the thing is that he scored the 44 points, yet at the same time, his team lost the game. So that would be, some evidence that this was in fact the strategy. Okay, now the thing is that this game was exactly 1,260 days before LeBron James scored 44 points in a game. And that's rare, by the way. It's a large number of points to be scoring in a game. So this was exactly 1,260 days before he scored 44 points in a game in which he, at the same time, became the 4th all-time scorer in the NBA, which is quite the coincidence. 44 points becoming the 4th all-time scorer. And that's because the 44th president is the basketball president who wore number 23, just like LeBron James. And the Antichrist's period is symbolized by 1,260 days. And that's why we have exactly 1,260 days between these two prophetic 44-point games by player number 23 in basketball. All right. Okay, and so that in itself confirms the 126 months connection, because both of these numbers, 126, connect from this prophetic game, this first game of the finals on June 4th. By the way, that finals game, was exactly 2 times 3 years, in which he scored 44 points. It was exactly 2 times 3 years after the prophetic Obama sign on June 4th, 2009. After he became the president, he went down to Cairo, Egypt, to deliver his famous Cairo, Egypt speech in order to tell the Muslim world that America is no longer a Christian nation. And that's not hyperbole. That's exactly what the speech was. Just listen to it. Okay, so Obama went down to the Muslim world, to Cairo, Egypt, to say, hey, relax, don't commit terrorism on us, give us a break, we're not Christians anymore. We've got Muslims in our country too, etc. That's what the purpose of the speech was. And that's exactly what he said in the speech. Anyway, he said that America is no longer a Christian nation because he's the Antichrist. And he did that right after he became the president. He went down to Egypt because a chapter in the book of Isaiah in the Bible describes the Antichrist and begins with, quote, woe to those who go down to Egypt, unquote, which is why Obama went down to Egypt right after he became the president. Okay. Now, so that was the 2 times 3 years, which ends at 23, before the 44 points. That's a pairing of 23 and 44. And like I explained, that's how God's big picture of science works. Now, so December 4th, this LeBron James sign was also exactly 66 plus 66 plus 66 months after Obama went down to Egypt. That's obviously a hint at the Antichrist, whose number in Bible prophecy is 666. So, in other words, we have like a circular diagram here. I could make it out of a diagram, but it's so simple you could probably picture this in your head. Okay, we have the June 4th, 2009 Obama in Egypt date. From this date, it is 2 times 3 years, and also 66 plus 66 months. It's 2 times 3 years to June 4th, 2015, which is 126 months before December 4th. And December 4th is also 66 plus 66 plus 66 months. That hints at 3 sixes after the June 4th, 2009 Obama went down to Egypt. Okay. That circular diagram that you could picture in your head is just more second witness confirmation to the relevance of all of the connections explained. It's all obvious. It's all fact. It's all true. What I'm saying is true. I mean, the purpose of this prediction for Paul Simon will prove this to the extreme skeptics. But if you are a rational person, in my opinion, what I just explained is true. Right? That can't just be a coincidence. I mean, how could you actually believe that all of what I just explained is a coincidence? That's not rational. It's not logical, right? But that is the case with actually so many things, it's indescribable. The skeptics, the agnostic atheists are truly fanatics. They're truly religious, truly religious fanatics. And it is a religion. Every worldview is a religion. And agnostic atheism isn't a non-worldview. It isn't a neutral worldview. It isn't a non-worldview. It is a worldview. And like every worldview and every religion, which is what worldviews are, there is a core belief in that religion that underlies everything. The core belief of Christianity is that there is a personal being God, not an impersonal energy like the Eastern Hindus and Buddhists, but a personal being God who is separate, holy from the creation, and he became a man, Jesus Christ. That's Christianity, right? That's the core belief, right? Well, the core belief of the agnostic atheist religion is that there's no evidence for God. There might be a God, but there's no evidence. But the truth is there's an overwhelming amount of evidence, and it's so obvious. But the truth is the agnostic atheist will never accept any of it because the only evidence they will ever accept is God standing in front of their face. But even that will not suffice for them, as Richard Dawkins would say, because even that would be possibly, in their mind, could be possibly dismissed with claiming that they were delusional in the moment. So, in other words, they have a really, really restrictive core belief that blinds them from seeing the truth. But it's irrational. It's so irrational. It's so irrational. But they're blinded by this irrational religion that they're fanatics of. And just because the majority of people in our culture today belong to this religion doesn't mean it's not a fanatic religion. I mean, it's fundamentalism. They might criticize other people in other religions for being fundamentalists or radicals. They're the radicals. I mean, what I just explained is clear, just for example. But I mean, that's not even, if you can't see that, there's all kinds of other evidence that's even more basic and more irrational to dismiss than that, what I just explained. Way more irrational to dismiss. I mean, this is like on a deep level here, but it's still clear. It's still absurd to dismiss what I've just explained. It cannot be a coincidence if you are a rational person. But human nature is that people aren't rational. And people believe what they want to believe. And also people believe based on tribal affiliation. Like, for example, someone who was, born into the Muslim culture or Catholic culture, and then they remain a Catholic or Muslim their entire life because of that. I mean, that's not really a search for truth. And if they claim that they have the truth, well, congratulations, you won the lottery. How lucky are you to have been born into the truth, you know? I personally can't relate to that because I know that that's not truth seeking. They're not really interested in the truth unless, you know, the Catholic went on a journey and really, you know, left Catholicism for a period in their life and was trying to figure out what's the truth, and then ultimately came to Catholicism as being the truth. But, you know, if that person were to do such a thing, they wouldn't come to the truth of Catholicism because the evidence that Catholicism isn't true is so overwhelming and clear. You know, I mean, that would imply that they never heard any of the basic arguments of non-Catholic Christians. Or if they did, they dismissed it irrationally, because it is irrational to dismiss the things that are so basic, right? So people aren't rational by nature, and it's human psychology. And God, you know, for whatever reason, God designed human psychology to be the way that it is. I don't personally understand it. I don't, you know, really understand how God could condemn these people when he, in fact, created the psychology of these people to maintain their tribalistic, you know, affiliation. And so I, you know, personally believe in the truth of what the Bible says, contrary to what other evangelicals will say, is that there are 3 categories of people after their deaths. Not 2. It's not binary. There's not heaven or hell. There will be those, and the majority of people will get a second chance in hell. They will pay. They will suffer. And everyone's hell is different, right? It's not all one place, right? Everyone's judgment and torture, etc., from demons, it's, you know, all of that's commensurate with the amount of light and blessings they received in their life and what they did. I mean, so anyway, there's a vast majority of middle people that, you know, perhaps were born before Christ or didn't really get a full opportunity to hear the gospel. For example, people in a country like in Southeast Asia or something, or even in a Muslim country. But there's still no excuse, really, because if they were interested in truth, all they would have to do is go onto the internet and type in evidence for Christianity and start the process. But they're just not interested in truth. And so they're not going to the good place right away, but they'll get an opportunity, a second chance to repent after they are visited by Jesus in Sheol, in hell, as the Bible says. I mean, that's, you know, that's what, there are passages that state that in the Bible, right? Contrary to what the other evangelicals will tell you, they dismiss these passages, right? Okay, so I got really off track there, but we do that once in a while in these videos because, you know, that's really the point of these videos is to prove the truth about things. And so let's get back on track here. We got way off track. Let's start here now. Now, his nickname is King James, and now we know why. His streak was broken at a record 1,297 games. Okay, G1297 is the word in the Greek concordance that means the king's edict or commandment, used in Hebrews 11:23, when the king of Egypt gives the edict to kill babies in the Old Testament, when Moses was saved and became the prince of the king of Egypt, right? Well, so that's amazing because this is King James we are talking about, and the record streak came to an end at 1,297 games, consecutive games in which he didn't score under 10 points, statistical points. And that gives us the king's edict. But that gets us to the Antichrist, because in the Bible, the king of Egypt is symbolic of the Antichrist, who is incidentally the leader of the blue team that supports killing of babies. in the womb. And, the question is, if you ask someone, who's in support of that, well, is it a baby in the womb? Well, and of course they'll say yes. Okay, so that it's a murder of the baby then, And so anyway, this is amazing. Now, why is God using this number here, 1,297? Well, 1,297 days after this day that the 1,297 game streak ended, which we've now established as being extremely important through these other connections that I explained up here, 1,297 days after this day is June 23rd, 2029. Now I'm just going to skip ahead because I'll explain it down here and furthermore. But now it's known that this is the day, well, it's believed to be the case, and what this is revealing is that this is the day that Obama will become the president again. That's a sort of edict, if you will, when Michelle Obama will step down, because the two of them will arrive at the White House on January 20th, 2029. Michelle will be the president, and Barack Obama will return to the White House, and that'll be constitutionally accepted. First of all, Trump will establish the precedent by running for vice president in 2028. And so that will already have been established with Trump as the precedent. And then after the predicted plane crash of Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom, the predicted running mates in 2028, in an emergency, the Democrat Party will nominate Michelle Obama with Barack as the vice president, with 3 months to go to the election. And so they will return, and then Michelle will step down, and Barack Obama will become the president again, and this will be constitutional because it's unclear, because the Constitution says that a person cannot be elected to the office more than twice, which is how Trump will, strategize to run again in 28 as the vice president. Okay, now, likewise Obama. And so anyway, that's what this is here. Because this streak symbolizes the end. It's a basketball end. Obama, the basketball president. LeBron James, by the way, wore 23. I just realized this. And this date we are talking about is the date, the 23rd of the month. And Cleveland, like it was involved here, is symbolic of 23. Because Cleveland skipped the 23rd presidency. And Obama will skip presidencies and come back. And it'll be on the 23rd of the month. Yeah. Now this day, here is some more interesting confirmation of all of this. So June 23rd, 2029 will be exactly 11 years and 9 months after the rapture sign, the Revelation 12 sign on 9/23, which said Obama, who was inaugurated in 09 and wore number 23. Also, the inverse of the mark of the Antichrist is described in the 9th chapter of Ezekiel, and this mark of the Antichrist changes a person's 23 pairs of chromosomes. Okay, and I believe LeBron James had a shoe named after him and was named Chromosomes. And the shoe had snake scales on it. That's because the mark of the Antichrist inserts snake venom into a person's chromosomes. Snake venom DNA, that is, which makes them marked. That's why they're marked. Begins with an MR and then ends with an NA technology, with the protruding amino acid chain that is snake venom that gets inserted into the person's chromosomes, and then they are marked as a snake, the biggest symbol of evil in the Bible. 11 years and 9 months because of Revelation 9:11, when King Apollyon rises from the bottomless pit. That's why King James here, and this date in which Obama will become the king of America. because he will be a king. He will preside over the end of democracy in America. By the way, even before I was a born-again Christian, on the day that he was elected, I understood then, and I even told friends at the time, America may have elected its first black president, but it also elected its last president, because the people get who the leader and leadership they deserve. And it was clear that America no longer deserved democracy with the election of this guy and the failure of the media, which is what a democracy depends on, to properly vet a presidential candidate, for example. And so the writing was on the wall. I said, this is the last president. I was very surprised when Trump became the president in 2017. But now I realize that Obama will become the president again. And so I was right. Way back in 2008, even before I was a born-again Christian, I knew that this was the last president. And he is the last president. I didn't know back then that he was the Antichrist, but now I do know that, and that's why he's the last president. Okay? So, and the failure not only of the media to vet the guy is not the only reason for the reason why America no longer deserved democracy, but the whole Democrat Party is anti-democratic. The irony is they accuse their opponents of doing all of the things that they do and who they are. And so the comedy was, them claiming to protect democracy during the 2024 campaign, but in the process, attempting to destroy democracy by, using lawfare against the candidate, etc., and everything that they've done. And everything, I mean, like so many things, like the constant outrageous lying that the media does, etc. But no, also there was a hysteria. There was a mass formation. There was a cult happening in America when Obama was elected in 2008. This blue team is highly cultish. There's been successive variations of this cult over the last years. From the CVD disease to the climate change to everything. It's a religious cult. As Chesterton said, when a person no longer believes in God, it's not that they don't believe in nothing anymore, they believe in anything. And anyway, this is it's a political cult / religious cult, the blue team today. Okay, now, and by the way, the prediction in this video, the purpose of this prediction that is from God, is to prove everything I am saying in this video, including what I have just said. Make no mistake, I know far better than you or anyone the reason and purpose for this prediction that is from God. And the purpose, I'll just say it clearly as possible. The purpose of this prediction is to prove all of the controversial things that I am saying, which are proven to be overwhelmingly the case through God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel. And this big picture of signs, patterns, and connections will be proven to be true when the prediction comes to pass. So, the purpose of this prediction is to prove the controversial things that I am saying, every single one of them. It's not for debate. It's not a discussion. It's the purpose of prophecy. This is a prophecy. 1/3 of the Bible is prophecy for the purpose of God proving the matter, proving that it is the inspired word of God, for example. Well, that's what's going on here. The purpose of this prediction is to not for you to go, oh, cool, neat. You were able to know that ahead of time. Wow, that's pretty neat. No, that is not the purpose of this prediction. The purpose of this prediction is to prove the things that I am saying, the controversial things that I am saying. That is the reason why I have been given a voice through this prediction. And the things that I am saying are all supported through God's big picture of signs. These aren't just opinions. I know they sound like opinions, but they aren't. They are fact because of the big picture of signs. Okay, so this June 23rd, 2029 date is also exactly 13 years and 9 months after the two antichrists met in the White House garden at the White House, Pope Francis and Barack Obama. How could Francis be the antichrist since he is dead? Well, he will be resurrected in April of 2029 by demons, the demons that will also promote the mark of the Antichrist, which serves to divide people. And 13 times 9 is 117, which is the equivalent in Hebrew gematria of the phrase in Hebrew, let it divide, in the first chapter of the Bible. The dividing chapter of the Bible is Psalms 117. The dividing year of the Roman Empire, when it reached its maximum expansion, was 117 AD. The solar eclipse that divided America, that peaked over the middle of America, peaked over St. Louis, the major city, at 1:17 p.m. And on and on. So, anyway, yeah. Now, this is given a star because this supports what I'm talking about here with this edict meaning of this number of the record streak that came to an end on the date in which we add this number of days to get June 23rd. In other words, we add the edict connection to get to June 23rd. Okay, and this was 19 years and 3 months exactly after Obamacare was signed, after Obama signed his Obamacare on March 23rd, 2010. This is also the equivalent of 231 months. So 231 is relevant because it is the 60th plus 60th plus 60th composite number, which is at 666. Obamacare, nationalized health care, will be used to enforce the mark of the Antichrist, which is supposedly a health care product, which will be enforced nationally. People will be forced to take it or compelled to take it through nationalized health care. That's why the Antichrist is known for nationalized health care. It's because the mark of the Antichrist is a nationalized health care product, supposedly. And so this connection is extremely amazing because Obamacare is an edict. It's a law. It's a king's edict. Now, 19 years and 3 months is also amazing because it hints at 193, which is the 44th prime number. And this connects from the 44th president's big thing of his presidency, the 44th presidency, Obamacare. The 44th presidency was known for Obamacare, and we have this 44th prime number connection to the day Obama is predicted to become the president again. Another thing about the number 231 is that it is the 7 plus 7 plus 7th triangular number. And that's the 3 sets of 7, which is in God's signs as symbolic of judgment and walls of security collapsing because of the story in the book of Joshua. Now, 231 also hints at the year 2031, when the second coming of Lord Jesus Christ will defeat the Antichrist on the Temple Mount. Okay, that's amazing, this connection here to Obamacare, which is an edict. That's why I give this a star here, because again, this is connected with the edict connection. Now, June 23rd, 2029 is also 9 plus 9 plus 9 days after Pentecost, which is believed to be the date of the rapture, the true Pentecost, on May 27th, 2029. It's the true Pentecost because of the correct way to count the Omer count, which also involves the watching for new moons. Okay, and God established this truth about when true Pentecost is through his prophetic signs, going back to 2018. which is another story, which is explained in an amazing video. Is Joshua, the book of Joshua, the key to understanding Revelation? And the answer is yes, and you need to watch that video. It explains, for one thing, the parallel of signs that the trail of prophetic signs that paralleled the timing of events in the book of Joshua, when the walls of security collapsed on Pentecost. Okay, well, 9, because God repeats the number 3 times, and number 9 is the most important number in God's signs. It's from the Bible. It symbolizes God's judgment. But also 999 flipped upside down is 666. And God has done that in his signs as well before. So we have another star one. June 23rd, 2029 is exactly 12 years and 6 months. There's that 126 number again. This is the equivalent of 150 months. And the flood judgment was 150 days. And this gets us to this prophetic date here involving Obama, December 23rd, 2016, and another edict. This was the prophetic UN Resolution 2334, which Netanyahu accused Obama as having orchestrated behind the scenes before he left office, which was the first time that America did not vote no on such a resolution. It abstained. And it condemned, for one thing, Jewish settlements and presence in East Jerusalem, the capital. The biggest transgression the world will do against God in the end times, as described in Bible prophecy, is to come against Israel and Jerusalem and attempt to make it an international city, the UN, and this effort will be led by Barack Obama, the anti-Semite. 9 months exactly. Okay, and that day, by the way, was 9 months before the rapture sign. The rapture sign depicted a birth, and 9 months is obviously the human gestation period. And that again was 11 months and 9 months to June 23rd, 2029. That's a typo. So you see, it's all full circle here. This line here is a full circle, just like this was. Remember I was saying this full circle here? Well, so is this. Right? Because the rapture, 923, connects to the UN resolution, which was 12 years, 6 months. But the rapture sign is also 11 years, 9 months. Because of Revelation 9:11 and King Apollyon, who rises from the bottomless pit. And okay, so Obamacare and UN Resolution 2334 are symbolic of edicts that hint at the coming Antichrist King's edict on June 23rd, 2029, which I believe will be that he has become the president again. Maybe there'll be something else. I'm pretty sure it's the day he'll become the president again, but maybe there'll be that and something also in addition to that. Maybe on the first day of his being in office, he'll issue a significant edict. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised because, well, theoretically, it could be that Michelle Obama steps down in an emergency, in a crisis, which requires an edict, which Obama takes responsibility for by replacing his wife on that day. That could be the case right there. Now, in the game in which the record streak ended of games consecutive without scoring under 10 points statistically, he scored 4 plus 4 points, statistic points. Not on the scoreboard points, but including assists. I don't know how they do it. I forget. But anyway, he scored 4 plus 4 points, which sends it the 44th president. Just another, random note here of the insights as they came. The scoring streak began 3 days before the release of the iPhone. So that's part of the news story too. Because the news stories were like, do you remember the days back then, this and that? That's when this streak of LeBron James's first started. You know, such and such musician was popular, et cetera, et cetera. But the main thing that they mention is that it was 3 days before the release of the iPhone, because, well, the iPhone, you know, changed the world, right? And so LeBron James's streak begins before the iPhone, but it was 3 days before. Obama will serve a third term. But this hints at the edict to make an image of the beast, which is a parallel with the king's edict in Daniel chapter 3. So God is pointing to this Daniel chapter 3 in general, but that's what this 3 days hints at, because that chapter is about an edict, and that edict is to make an image of the beast. Well, it's to make a statue, but so the book of Revelation prophecy often parallels Old Testament prophecy. And in the book of Revelation, there is an edict to make an image of the beast, as it is described. This is the phrase, the image of the beast. Well, we know that image is cell phones and the internet. For one thing, if we read the Greek and read the translation from the Greek, it says that this beast was able to speak an unutterable language. So when John was seeing this in his vision or whatever to write this down, it wasn't like a normal language, but it was a language, and that's because it's computer code, which is a language. So that's the image of the beast, which is used to enforce the mark of the Antichrist. The mark of the Antichrist is described in the context of the image of the beast. Okay, but all of this is a parallel with Daniel chapter 3, including the statue, this image of the beast. It's just a parallel. It's just symbolism. There are actually evangelicals that think that there's going to be a statue made and it's going to start talking. But no, it's just allegory. It's just symbolism. The image of the beast talks. It's currently already talking. That's another thing. If you read the passages, it's clear that the Antichrist system is handed to the Antichrist. He doesn't create the system. He doesn't create the statue in the image of the beast. It's already handed to him. He arrives when it's already in place. Okay? And no, it's not going to be a statue talking. It's the internet. It's the cell phones. It's the iPhone, which is why LeBron's streak, which hints at edict because it was 1,297 days, began 3 days before the release of the iPhone, the image of the beast, as in the edict in Daniel chapter 3. See how amazing this is? In other words, this is just more confirmation that, in fact, the iPhone and the smartphones and the internet is the image of the beast. All right? Now, if you don't believe me, or if you think that's interesting, but I don't know for sure, well, when the prediction for Paul Simon's slip and fall happens, it'll prove it. And again, I know far better than you the reason and purpose for this prediction that is from God. Okay? I know more than you about why the purpose of this prediction. This is fact when this comes to pass, okay? That's why we have this here. That's why the 3 days. It's Daniel chapter 3, 3 days before the iPhone, because the iPhone is the image of the beast. Okay. Now, we knew this already, but others do not. This proves that the cell phone or internet is the image of the beast that speaks an unutterable language, computer code. That's the correct translation from the Greek in verse 15 of that chapter, okay? The difference in the score of the game was 3 points, and it was against Toronto, which is the Tower of Babel city. I mean, literally, they play the games right next to the Tower of Babel, the CN Tower. It's the Tower of Babel city because it is the city that is made up of people from all over the world speaking all of the different languages. It's not really Canada, because there's no such thing as Canada anymore, especially in its cities. There's not a country anymore. I mean, Trudeau said that Canada was the first post-national country. I mean, that's the left for you, right? I mean, World War I really did a huge number on nationalism in Western civilization. I mean, that was the end of nationalism and the beginning of all of this spirit of Antichrist, anti-nationalism stuff, which ultimately led to the destruction of Canada because it is no longer a country. And it is the Tower of Babel city, which is symbolized by the CN Tower. And I know this is a fact. This isn't just my opinion. God has demonstrated that the CN Tower is in fact symbolic of the Tower of Babel. Well, the story of the Tower of Babel totally aligns with what Toronto is, which is a city of people from all over the world speaking all different languages. That's, by the way, why Obama attended a basketball game next to the Tower of Babel. It was game 2 of the NBA Finals with the Raptors, which hints at rapture. The rapture is the escape of God's faithful from the persecution from the Antichrist, Barack Obama, at the Lord's second coming, which is why Obama attended game 2 at the Tower of Babel. And Nimrod in that story of the Tower of the Babel is an archetype or a type for the Antichrist. So the game that LeBron James had his streak end in is an Antichrist city that he had the game end in. The game was played in Toronto next to the Tower of Babel. And the difference of score at the end of the game was 3 points. But there's actually more to this 3 points that I'll explain here. I'll drill in more to the details here. But so that 3 points also confirms what I'm saying and how it's relevant that LeBron James's streak began 3 days before the release of the iPhone, which relates to the Tower of Babel also. Because the Tower of Babel story is also about the use of technology to reach heaven without God, which is a parallel with our time with transhumanism technology, which is the thing, begins with an MR and then ends with an NA, to reach or achieve immortality without God. Okay? So that's why the 3-point difference. But the 3-point difference is amazing too because it came right down to the end of the game there at the buzzer with a 3-pointer. The score was tied at the buzzer when the 3-pointer was shot by LeBron James's teammate after he was passed the ball from LeBron James. Okay, now the last time James scored less than 10 points, the score of the game summed to 181, which is the equivalent of the name Barack Obama in Hebrew gematria. Obama is the basketball president. He started the streak when he was 22 years old. 22 is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist in God's signs. The inverse of the mark of the Antichrist described in the book of Ezekiel would have been a Tav mark. A Tav is the last and 22nd letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And the mark of the Antichrist is described in the last book of the Bible, the 22nd out of 22 books in the Bible that have a total of 22 chapters. Also, the mark of the Antichrist changes a person's chromosomes, and chromosomes come in pairs, and each chromosome is made up of 2 arms, and so 2 and 2. Bronny James, LeBron James's son, who also plays for the Lakers, was 2 years old. And James was playing in his 2+2nd season in the NBA when the streak started. And James has won 2+2 MVPs. Okay, this is all mark of the Antichrist. And by the way, he wears number 23, and 23 pairs of chromosomes are altered by the mark of the Antichrist. Reeves led the Lakers in the game with 44 points in the game. the player from Dallas was out of the game. Okay, the famous Luka Don, I don't know how to pronounce, I forget how to pronounce his last name, but it was the biggest NBA basketball trade in history earlier this year, when this player from Dallas was traded, the star player from Dallas was traded to Los Angeles for not much in return, which ultimately led to the firing of the general manager who approved that trade. So this player from Dallas is, very symbolic, and Dallas is symbolic of the church, Dallas being the capital of evangelicalism. So the player from Dallas was out of the game against the Raptors, which since at the Rapture, it just came to me, I just realized, what confirms this furthermore is that it was against the Raptors. Okay. The rapture of the church. James currently has scored more than 42,000 points. That's amazing. At the time of the streak ending, he has scored 42,000 points. The number that symbolizes the period of the Antichrist in Bible prophecy is 42. The Lakers scored 123 points in the game. 123 is the 42nd semi-prime number, a number that is only divisible by two other prime numbers, which God uses. The game was won with a buzzer beater from a pass from James to the player from Japan, who scored a three-pointer. This three-pointer at the end of the game hints at the end times in Daniel chapter 3, like I explained. What confirms this is that the Japanese player is the second player from Japan to be drafted, and he scored his first buzzer beater with 3 points, which hints at the basketball president in the end times who wore jersey number 23. James is number 23. The player from Japan hints at Japanimation. God is using Japan for symbolism for Japanimation, which is obsessed with spiritual possession in themes in the animation stories, which hints at demonic possession of those who take the mark of the Antichrist that alters their 23 pairs of chromosomes that have been marked. So in other words, Japan symbolizes demonic possession of those who take the mark of the Antichrist. But it alters the 23 pairs, which is why number 23, and his pass to the Japanese player. And what confirms all of that is that he's the second ever drafted from Japan, and he scored a three-pointer, his first three-pointer at the buzzer. His first buzzer beater, I should say. Which he mentioned that. He said he was happy to score his first buzzer beater of his career, making it more relevant, what I'm saying. So, why did Austin Reeves, number 15, score the buzzer beater 15 days before December 19th? Well, actually, that's a typo. Austin Reeves didn't score the buzzer beater, the Japanese player did, but Austin Reeves was the player that scored the highest number of points in the game with 44 points. The buzzer beater hinted at 23, and 23 pairs with 44. Okay, so that's why Austin Reeves is prophetic, is relevant. Anyway, he wears number 15, and this is 15 days before December 19th, the date it's predicted that Paul Simon will slip and fall and injure his head. So what's going on here? Well, Austin Reeves was born in Newark, Arkansas. Paul Simon was born in Newark, New Jersey. Newark hints at Mark, the mark of the Antichrist. And by the way, 15 is the sixth semi-prime number, and 6 is 2 times 3, which is 23, and it's 23 pairs of chromosomes that are altered with the mark of the Antichrist. And Paul Simon's recent album, 7 Psalms, which was instructed to be made through a dream he had, it's his 15th solo album. That's another way in which Paul Simon parallels connects with Austin Reeves, number 15. Now, Arkansas is the 25th state. New Jersey is the 3rd state. That gives us 28. And Paul Simon's predicted to fall and injure his head in the 28th state. The Lakers hint at Lake of Fire and Fallen Angels, Los Angeles, as in fallen angels that fall into the lake of fire, and Simon is predicted to fall. Austin hints at the 28th state. I'm pretty sure it's the capital of the 28th state, actually. Austin is closer to Wimberley than San Antonio. The reason why I mentioned that to my friend here is because we already know that Simon's home in Wimberley connects with San Antonio and the Battle of the Alamo, etc. We've known that already. God has demonstrated that. But Austin is actually closer to Wimberley than even San Antonio. In other words, Wimberley is in between San Antonio and Austin. That's, by the way, why the basketball player Wembanyama, which instead Obama, plays for San Antonio. All right. Now, Reeves means bailiff. That's the word, the name meaning. Bailiffs are known for their keys. Key is equal to 41 in simple English gematria. A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3. And Simon was born in 41, and he's known for his music composition, which uses musical keys. Christopher Reeve fell off of his horse and landed on his head. Paul Simon is predicted to fall and hit his head. So what I'm going into now is how Austin Reeves, in fact, hints at Christopher Reeve. Christopher Reeve bought his horse, Eastern Express, nicknamed Buck, during the filming of Village of the Damned, which was released 9 plus 10 plus 10 days before he fell off of his horse. So there's this horror movie, thriller, Village of the Damned, and he fell off of his horse during the filming, and the movie was released a prophetic 9 plus 10 plus 10 days before he fell off of his horse. And that hints at Revelation 9:11 and the rise of King Apollyon and the demons from the bottomless pit that will come to demonically possess people who have taken the mark of the Antichrist. And they'll possess people through their brains, in their heads, through frequencies. Music is frequencies, and that's why Paul Simon will fall on and injure his head. It'll hint at all of this. But that's why also Christopher Reeve fell off of his horse with this Revelation 9:11 connection before the release of this Village of the Damned movie. Or after. No, before. He fell after the movie was released. No, before. But anyway, it doesn't really matter, but okay. Reeve fell off of his horse on May 27th, 1995. And The Village of the Damned was released on April 28th, 95. The horse refused to jump the typical W-shaped jump. W hints at 23. It is the 23rd letter of the alphabet. That's why WWW, for example, it's prophecy. WWW, symbolizing the internet, the image of the beast, is 23 because the mark of the Antichrist, enforced through the image of the beast, alters a person's 23 pairs of chromosomes. From Reeves's fall to Reeves' game, the present, what we're talking about here, the LeBron James game in which his streak came to an end, that began 3 days before the image of the beast, the iPhone. From Reeves's fall to Reeves's game at the Tower of Babel, it is 11,149 days, and this is the 1,350th prime number. The buzzer beater, Reeves. He wasn't the buzzer beater. He scored the top score of the game, 44 points. But he wore number 15, and the game came down to the 3 points. 3 times 15 is 45, and 135 is 45 plus 45 plus 45. Now, there might be more to this later, but as this is, this is weak. This isn't strong. This isn't solid. All right? It doesn't mean it's not true, but we need some more confirmation here. But actually we don't. I take it back. This line is, we don't need confirmation for the significance of 45. Because God has demonstrated big time that the number 45 hints at its inverse, 1 divided by 45, which is 0.022. And again, 22 symbolizes the mark of the Antichrist. And so 45, and God repeats a number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning. And so from Reeves's fall to the Reeves game, we get this number that hints at the mark of the Antichrist. Because 135 is 45 plus 45 plus 45, which hints at this repetition, really, of 0.022 plus 0.022 plus 0.22. In other words, it's an emphasis of the symbolism for the mark of the Antichrist. Furthermore, Reeves fell off of a typical jump. It was an unexpected fall because the horse hesitated before jumping over the typical W-shaped fence, which hints at 23, as does King James's number, LeBron James, number 23, which hints at 23 pairs of chromosomes, which are altered by the mark of the Antichrist. And that's why this is significant, amazing, because also the fall and Reeves's fall onto his head, which caused his quadriplegic injury, is symbolic of, like we're talking about Paul Simon's fall and injury of his head, like Elvis Presley died from his head injury when he fell on his head in his mansion, and Paul Simon sang about the Graceland mansion. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Paul Simon fell in his other mansion in Los Angeles, as in Fallen Angels, 10 years earlier before he died, but he died due to the autoimmune diseases that the head injury caused. This is what professionals believe. That was the reason for his drug intake, because he was dealing with these autoimmune diseases, which in itself is symbolism for the mark, because the injection gives people autoimmune diseases. Okay, so that's why this is amazing. This connection between Reeves's fall to the Reeves game and the LeBron James game. Now, also, Village of the Dam cost $22 million and made $9 million. God pairs 9 and 22 to confirm his signs and connections, which is how his big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, as I explained. The pairing of 9 and 22, one reason, not only is the Antichrist inaugurated in 09 and will enforce the mark of the Antichrist symbolized by 22, but the inverse of the mark of the Antichrist is described in the 9th chapter of Ezekiel, which would have been a Tav mark, the last and 22nd letter of the alphabet. I think I read a headline about there being talk of trading Reeves for the Bucks. Giannis. Reeves's horse was named Buck. Okay, this is true actually. At the time of this Reeves game, this prophecy involving Reeves that I'm explaining here, at the time of this, there was talk in the media about a potential trade, serious talk about the Lakers trading Reeves to the Milwaukee Bucks basketball team. Okay? For this player, Giannis, the star player from the Bucks, Giannis. Which is interesting because Reeves' horse was named Buck. This confirms this connection, in other words. Right? From Reeves' fall off of Buck, the horse, to the Reeves game at the time of the trade talk to the Bucks. Now, Giannis is number 34. Reeves' fall off of Buck on May 27th, 95 is exactly 34 years before the rapture. Wow. Wow. On May 27th, 2029, and again, the game, this Reeves game, was against the Raptors. Something that I probably missed at the time because I didn't write it. You know what also? The actor who played Buck Rogers died 3 times 4 days after this Reeves game. Wow. Which confirms these connections to Buck. Wow. Now, this is all relevant to Paul Simon. Oh, and Buck Rogers died 3 days before Paul Simon's predicted to fall. Well, anyway, the talk of the Bucks trade for number 34 at the time of Reeves's game at the Tower of Babel, and the connection to the fall of Christopher Reeve off of his horse named Buck. This game involving Reeves and the trade talk of the Bucks whose number is 34, and is 34, and and Reeves' fall off of Buck is 34 years before the rapture. The talk of the trade for the player from the Bucks, number 34, is 3 times 4 days before the death of Buck Rogers, the actor who played Buck Rogers. And I have to look into it because I'm not familiar with Buck Rogers. It's before my time a bit. And but I wouldn't be surprised if there is, because he's science fiction, right? That's got to be symbolism for the transhumanism technology that's pointed to furthermore through the Tower of Babel, the CN Tower, and this game against the Raptors that Reeves played in, which is why it connects Christopher Reeve's fall to the rapture. But just to confirm it, God added another thing here, this 3 times 4 days to the death of Buck Rogers, known for his role in the science fiction, or the death of Jill Gerard. No kidding. Wait a second. Jill Gerard, that's got a hint at Giannis, number 34. The death of Jill Gerard was 3 times 4 days after this prophetic Reeves game at the time of the talk to the involving the Bucks for Giannis, as in Jill Gerard, number 34, as in 3 times 4 days to the death of Buck Rogers. Science fiction from the game at the CN Tower, which is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist, transhumanism technology. Science fiction. Wow. Now, what I was going to say is that all of this is relevant to Paul Simon because God is using Paul Simon and his signs to point to this repeating idiom in the book of Amos. Famous Amos, the founder of the biggest cookie company in America, Wally Amos, was the first agent to sign Simon and Garfunkel. And he lured them into his office with a gift of cookies. And then he went on to found the biggest cookie company in American history, which is a prophetic sign. But anyway, the repeating idiom in the book of Amos is for 3 transgressions and for 4, which means the tolerable limit of transgressions has been exceeded and now judgment and destruction are unavoidable. which is what the death of Paul Simon will symbolize. Because it'll be the bookend, as in Paul Simon's fourth album with Garfunkel, Bookends, containing the song America. Paul Simon's death will be the bookend to the beginning of the warning of judgment on 9/11. And just days after, Paul Simon opened cold the broadcast of Saturday Night Live, the first one after 9/11. Anyway, so that's amazing. This 3 times 4 days then also to the death of Buck Rogers that confirms all of this. And Christopher Reeve, of course, Superman is science fiction also, right? In a way. I mean, it's, I guess fantasy, but, well, okay. So, and there were 135 space shuttle missions. With the addition of Buck Rogers to this makes more sense now. Because again, we had the 135th or 1,350th prime number of days between Reeves's fall and this Reeves game at the Tower of Babel. And that hinted at this prophetic repetition of 0.022, as I explained, and the mark of the Antichrist, and the transhumanism technology, and the escape of it in the rapture, as in the Toronto Raptors that play at the Tower of Babel, as in transhumanism technology, that the faithful will be rescued from. Well, what's more science fiction than in real life than the space shuttle missions? There was 135 of them. So Buck Rogers, the connection to Buck Rogers confirms this connection with this number right here. I'm quoting now from Wikipedia. Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. Superman fights the villain Nuclear Man in an extended battle on the surface of the moon. During the fight, Superman even moves the moon out of its orbit to create a solar eclipse and temporarily depower his sun-dependent opponent. Okay. Superman 2, while Superman himself doesn't go to the moon in the main plot, the Kryptonian villains, General Zod, Ursa, and Non, land on the moon and confront a group of NASA astronauts in the film's opening. This is the, and God uses firsts for signs. This is the symbolic opening of the film, Superman 2, as in the second coming of Lord Jesus Christ. And Superman 2 is about these 3 villains, which, by the way, is a 23, Superman 2 and the 3 villains, which gives us 23, which identifies the Antichrist, who has power, supernatural power, as will the Antichrist. Superman hints at the Antichrist, Superman. The Nazis were about the attempt to achieve the Superman, right? And Hitler and them were a type for the Antichrist. Well, NASA is involved in the opening of the movie Superman here. So Superman 2 hints at the second coming, second presidency of Obama, 2 antichrists, begins with 3 villains with superpowers on the moon, where they kill American astronauts. Superman 2 and 3 villains hints at 23. The movie was released in Australia on December 4th, 1980, exactly 45, as in, again, the inverse, 0.022, as in Superman 2, years before number 15 scored the buzzer beater 3-pointer. Again, it wasn't number 15, but anyway. But he had the highest scoring number of points in the game. 15 times 3 is 45. Reeves scored off a pass from player number 23. Well, no, the Japanese player did. Anyway, who formerly was the villain of the NBA because he betrayed Cleveland, okay? Well, you get the idea here. Now, of course, Simon sang about the Apollo moon missions to the moon on the date 119, which hints at Revelation 9:11 and King Apollyon. He opened a Saturday Night Live broadcast after 9/11 when 2 planes struck 17 minutes apart, which hinted at the 2 space shuttle disasters almost exactly 17 years apart, which hinted at Apollo 11 and 17, the last mission in which American astronauts went to the moon. The last American to step off of the moon was symbolic of America's departure from Christ, because the moon symbolizes Christ. It is a giant rock, which is symbolism for Jesus. The sun's light symbolizes God the Father, and the sun's light is too bright for us to gaze at, but we can gaze at the sun's light reflected off of the moon. And this is why watching for the timing of the moon in the Bible is important and symbolic of the timing, watching for the timing of the Lord's return through signs, including moon signs, including Superman 2. And Paul Simon singing about the Apollo missions at the inauguration of Jimmy Carter on the date 119. Okay. 2 planes 17 minutes apart equals 34. Giannis of the Bucks wears number 34. And again, this Reeves game is 3 times 4 days before the death of Buck Rogers, which is science fiction, which is space, which is the space shuttle missions. The day of the buzzer beater by Reeves, and again, it wasn't Reeves, it was a Japanese guy, was a full moon. December 19th, the date of Simon's predicted fall and head injury, will be a new moon. Player number 2 times third semi-prime number scored his buzzer-beating 44th point off a pass from player number 23, a pairing of 23 and 44. And his number is the 2 times third semi-prime number. 2 times third semi-prime days before the predicted fall and head injury of Paul Simon. There you go. That's how this connects. Reeves and Simon, again, were both born in Newark in the 3rd state. Reeves scored 3 points at the buzzer. Again, it wasn't Reeves. Anyway, Reeve fell at the jump shaped like a W. W equals 23 equals chromosomes equals the mark of the Antichrist. The name Newark contains a W, which flipped becomes an M, as in Mark. Newark hints at the new mark of the Antichrist, which will injure people's heads, which is why Paul Simon will fall and injure his head. It will symbolize this. And the injury of their people's heads will involve the components from the things migrating to their brains and assembling spontaneously as transistors that will pick up the frequencies and thus engender delta brain waves, which will facilitate demonic possession, as described in Revelation 9:11, which is why Paul Simon sang about the Apollo mission in his song American Tune at the inauguration on the date 119. 9 days before the published Stephen King book, as in Apollyon, King Apollyon, in Revelation 9:11, his book The Shining, which is about demonic possession, and a large hotel and a ballroom hall, which is why Paul Simon, in his song about the mansion and traveling to it, said that the Mississippi Delta was shining like a national guitar. He also famously dated Shelley Duvall, whom he met at the filming of Annie Hall, as in the haunted ballroom hall in the movie The Shining, and he broke up with Shelley Duvall at the airport, as in Portal to Demons, before she flew to the UK to film the movie The Shining. Oh, Jimmy Carter equals 135. I knew there was more to the 135. As I mentioned even earlier, I said earlier that there was something more to this, and I just forgot. Well, Jimmy Carter equals 135. And Simon sang about the Apollo moon mission at Carter's inauguration on the date 119, as in Revelation 9:11, King Apollyon. And by the way, in the movie The Shining, incidentally, the kid Danny wears a sweater of the Apollo mission. From Reeves's fall on his head, It is the 1,350th prime number of days to the Reeves game in which he didn't score at the buzzer, but he scored 44 points. Okay. And he played with LeBron James, whose streak ended, which is a pairing of 23 and 44. Okay. And his streak ended and the game was about the buzzer beater at the end of the game, right? End times end of the age. Aging King James, which is why this is a story and why his streak ended, because King James is aging. And that's the story. The underlying story here is how King James has played so many years in the NBA and now he is aging. So aging King James at the end of the game with his assist at the Tower of Babel hints at the end of the age and King Apollyon and King Antichrist basketball 44th president. Again, Reeves scored 44 points. Reeves scored a Lakers high 44 points in the game at the end of the game. Jimmy Carter, as in 135, was the oldest living president. That's why. This is all connecting here. He became the oldest living president on the date 322, exactly 3 months and 22 days after the death of the 41st president, who was, until this date, the oldest living president. 41 equals key in simple English gematria. A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3. King Apollyon will be released from the bottomless pit with a key, as described in the prophecy. And Simon was born in Newark, as was Reeves, in 41. Simon composes music, the GOAT, greatest of all time of pop music composition, which, by the way, also parallels with the GOAT of basketball. That's another reason why these connect. The GOAT of American pop music composition composes music with musical keys. And the name Reeves is equal to bailiff, which means keys. I forgot about that. Wow. Which is used for the bottomless pit. Stunning. And by the way, the Vatican is symbolized by keys. And Jimmy Carter was the first president to host a pope at the White House, which ultimately hints to Obama, who probably, I'm sure, was the last president to host a pope at the White House. Those two men being the antichrists. There's two antichrists in Bible prophecy. Reeve fell while riding his horse. The cover art for Simon's Graceland album about the mansion is, which by the way hints at the bottomless pit, the dwelling, if you will, the abode, the mansion of the demons and King Apollyon. Okay, the cover art for Simon's Graceland album is of a man riding a horse. This obviously also hints at Bible prophecy in which the Antichrist is riding a horse in the four horses of the apocalypse. Reeves scored 44 points, and it connected to the day that Reeve fell off of his horse, as in the four horses of the apocalypse. That just came to me just now. Amazing. Wow. Wow, actually. That's really a wow. That's wow. Whoa. Okay. I'm glad that discovery was made. So, yeah. So Reeve fell while riding a horse. The cover art of Simon's Graceland album is of a man riding a horse. The art is from Ethiopia in the 15th century. Reeves, the basketball player, wore number 15. Wow. And Simon's new album is the 15th solo album. The King's Graceland mansion is in Little Egypt, the area of the country nicknamed Little Egypt, ancient Egypt and ancient Nubia. As in Ethiopia, had intertwined histories. Okay? And the Antichrist was born in East Africa, near Ethiopia, and he will dwell as the King Antichrist in the White House mansion. So again, the connection here is that the cover art for Simon's Graceland album is of a man riding a horse. It's biblical too. It's Christian art. It's Ethiopian Coptic Christian art from the 15th century. Okay, and that connects with Reeve here, with who fell off of his horse. Through player number 15, which is why the 15th century. Because Reeve, again, falling off of his horse connects with the Reeves game. Reeves was born in Newark, just like Simon, etc. Simon's 15th solo album, which he was instructed to make in a dream. And by the way, that's 7 Psalms is the name of the album. And the Graceland album is his 7th solo album. So, but the King's Graceland Mansion is in Memphis, Tennessee, which is named after Memphis, Egypt. It's in Little Egypt, a nickname for the area of the country. And also the King's Palace, the King's Mansion, I should say, is symbolic of the King's Palace in Egypt. And in the Bible, the King of Egypt is symbolic of the Antichrist. And the Antichrist was born in West Kenya near Ethiopia, East Africa. And God is, using this in his signs. This isn't by any means the first example. There's tons of them, of this association. For example, the Greek concordance word for 128 is the Ethiopian, and Michelle and Barack Obama were born exactly 128 weeks apart. And Obama was born in Ethiopia. Well, right next to it. East Africa, same thing. Now, in Egypt and Ethiopia, ancient Nubia, their histories were intertwined, okay? So you get the idea. Now, then the Antichrist will be in the White House mansion, as in the King of Rock's Graceland mansion, which Paul Simon sang about. Now, the Graceland, as in Rapture album, was released 8 years, 8 months, and 3 days before the release of Village of the Damned. 883 is the 153rd prime number, which is symbolic of the rapture, because it's the harvest of fish at the end of the age. Jesus' last miracle involved 153 fish. 153 fish in the last miracle equals Paul Simon, the name of the 2 chief fishers of men. Paul to the Gentiles, and Peter, whose name was Simon, to the Jews. Village of the Damned was released 9 plus 10 plus 10 days before Reeve fell off of his horse onto his head, which connects to Simon's predicted fall onto his head, as I've explained, through the basketball game here involving Reeves. Reeves' fall also connects with exactly 34 years to the rapture. Giannis is number 34 from Athens, ancient civilization, and his parents are from Nigeria, Africa. Simon's Graceland album is African-influenced music, and the cover art of a man riding a horse is African. The painting used for the cover art is housed at a museum in Salem, Massachusetts. When Simon sang about the Apollo moon mission, he also sang about the Mayflowers crossing to Massachusetts, the spiritual founding of America. Which is why this song that he sang is so prophetic. All right. Oh, and that hints at 11, which pairs the 9 days. Forgot about that. That's right. The 9 days from when Paul Simon sang about the Mayflower and Apollo, the Apollo mission, to the published date of The Shining by Stephen King, hints at Revelation 9:11 and King Apollyon, because the Mayflower hints at the number 11. Hence the pairing with the 9 days from Simon singing about the Mayflower. The reason why the Mayflower symbolizes 11 is, well, it took 66 days for them to cross due to a storm that blew them off course and blew them to Massachusetts instead of Virginia. 66 is the 11th triangular number. They anchored first on the date 11/11, and it was 101 passengers, which hints at 11. And that was followed up by the 11-ship flotilla led by John Winthrop of the Puritans, who founded the Boston Bay Colony, etc. So it's all about the number 11, which is why Flight 11, which departed Governor's Island in Boston, where John Winthrop lived, the first governor, and then flew into the towers. It looked like a giant 11. It also had a crew of 11 people. And New York State, the 11th state, and New York City is made of 11 letters. It all points back to the spiritual founding of America, which was founded on Christ, in Christ. Plymouth Rock, Winthrop's speech derived from the promises of blessings and curses for the Israelites before they crossed the Jordan River, and the Puritans believed their crossing of the Atlantic was analogous to the Israelites crossing the Jordan River. They were also both escaping religious persecution from the king of Egypt and the king of England. I just realized that England and Egypt begin with the letter E. That's amazing. That's so amazing. And you know what? You know what? You can take it for what you will. But I know that the reason why England begins with an E is because Egypt begins with an E in the English language, which God used to spread the gospel around the world. But that's why. It's because the Pilgrims and the Puritans saw their crossing to the New World as their promised land and analogous to their escape, to the Israelites' escape from the king of Egypt. They were escaping the king of England. And they begin with the letter E, and that's not an accident. I don't believe. This Reeves game, was, and again, at the time, the talk was of trading Reeves to the Bucks, number 34, This Reeves game was 340 days after Jimmy Carter died. Wow. There you go. 340 days hints at Janus number 34 for 3 transgressions for 4, and for 4, like I explained, which hints at Simon. The end of the Apollo missions, Apollo 17, was on December 19th, 1972, which is the 4 times 4th prime number of years to the predicted slip and fall and injury of the head of the man who sang about the Apollo mission, Paul Simon, on December 19th. 17 is the 4th superprime number, which is why we connect the Apollo 4th semi-superprime number with 4 times 4th prime number of years. The end of the Apollo missions was exactly 4 years and 1 month, as in 41, to Simon, who was born in 41, singing about the Apollo mission, who sang about the Apollo mission at Carter's inauguration on the date 119, which is at Revelation 9:11. This is also 7 times 7 years, and Simon sang at the inauguration in 77. So I'll just repeat that. The end of the Apollo missions on December 19th, 72 connects to Paul Simon singing about the Apollo missions at the inauguration of the president in 77. 4 years and 1 month is also 7 times 7 years. But 4 years and 1 month because Paul Simon was born in 41. And a key opens the bottomless pit to King Apollyon in Revelation 9:11, which is why Paul Simon sang on the date 119 about Apollo. 41 being the equivalent of the word key in simple English gematria. The final score of the game was made at the very end of the game at as the buzzer sounded. It was symbolic of the end times. The game was played, which involves the basketball president. The game was played right next to the Tower of Babel, where also the basketball president watched a prophetic NBA Finals game. The game was played right next to the Tower of Babel in the Tower of Babel city against the team named Raptors, which hints at the rapture. This is also symbolic of the end times. The first score of the game was a 3-pointer by number 15 Reeves off a pass from number 23. That's true. Number 15 is the 2 times 3rd semi-prime number, which hints at 23. Reeves went on to become the score leader of the game with 44 points, a pairing of 23 and 44, which hints at the basketball president, the 44th president, who wore number 23. The final score of the game at the buzzer was a game winner from the 3-point line, and it too was off of a pass from number 23. The furthest distance of 3-point line in the NBA is 23 feet and 9 inches. That hints at the basketball president who was inaugurated in 09 and wore number 23. The inauguration of the basketball number 23 president in 09, 23 pairs of chromosomes, that is the inverse of the mark, Ezekiel chapter 9. Okay. At the corners, the distance is 22 feet, and that symbolizes the mark, because it would have been a tav in Ezekiel chapter 9, the last and 22nd letter of the Hebrew alphabet. The mark of the Antichrist is described in the last book of the Bible, the 22nd out of 22 books in the Bible that have a total of 22 chapters. The other line relevant to scoring in basketball is the key. Paul Simon composes music using musical keys. The final score of the game, a 3-pointer, was made by the second player to be drafted from Japan. This hints at 23. It made the final score for the Los Angeles Lakers 123 points. 123 is the 42nd semi-prime number, and 42 is symbolic of the period of the Antichrist in Bible prophecy, and the Antichrist is number 23. Los Angeles Lakers hints at fallen angels into the lake of fire. The final score was made by player number 28. The buzzer beater was made by player number 28, actually. Paul Simon is predicted to slip and fall and injure his head in the 28th state. 15 days after this game, in which the highest scoring player was number 15, Austin Reeves. Simon will slip and fall near Austin 15 days later. Austin Reeves and Paul Simon were both born in Newark, as in new mark of the Antichrist in the 3rd state, as in Daniel chapter 3, regarding the symbolic mark and the edict. Again, James's streak being the edict, King's edict, right? Austin Reeves and the player from Japan made the first and last scores of the game from the 3-point line. The final score at the buzzer was made by the player from Japan, number 28. Simon sang "The Mississippi Delta Was Shining" at a state dinner at the White House mansion for the Prime Minister of Japan. And that was on the date for 10, which since at 41, the year Simon was born. And because 41 equals the key, and the key opens the bottomless pit. Anyway, and Japan is symbolism for demonic possession that will be done by the demons arising from the bottomless pit. But the demonic possession is also the shining, which is why Paul Simon sang "The Mississippi Delta Was Shining" like a national guitar at the state dinner for the Prime Minister from Japan. And the demonic possession will be facilitated by delta brainwaves triggered by frequencies, which is music, frequencies in the air, which is why Paul Simon will slip and fall and injure his head, as in the brain injuries from the things that will lead to demonic possession. He'll fall and fall on his head in the 28th state, 15 days after the first and last scores by number 15 and 28. Yes. The reason for this connection involving these prophetic 3-pointers is that on the date Paul Simon is predicted to slip and fall, the third interstellar object will make its closest approach to Earth, December 19th. The closest approach to Earth of the third interstellar object will be exactly the 84th semi-prime number of weeks before the predicted asteroid hit on Earth. This prophetic basketball game that pointed to the basketball president was exactly 4 months after the 44th president's 4 times 4 times 4th birthday on the date 8/4. Yes. And so the 3-pointers and the third interstellar object and his 4 months to the 44th president and his 4 times 4 times 4th birthday, that's a 3 and 4. As in the number Giannis the 3 times 4 days to Buck Rogers, and the 34 years from Reeve falling on his head to the rapture, the game being played at the Raptors Stadium next to the Tower of Babel. Anyway, all this points to Simon because for 3 transgressions and for 4, the idiom, as I explained, the tolerable limit of transgressions has been exceeded, and now judgment is and destruction is unavoidable, which is what Paul Simon's death will symbolize. It'll be the bookend to the opportunity to repent for America that has slidden away, which is why Paul Simon's big hit is slip, sliding away, and why he will slip and slide and fall on his head on December 19th. This 4 months connection is also 122 days. Wow. And 122 is the 41st semi-prime number. Simon was born in 41. He composes music with musical keys, and the key is the line in the court of basketball, and key equals 41 in simple English gematria. It is a key that will open the bottomless pit to the demons that will possess people. The key will open the bottomless pit to King Apollyon, which is the reason why this game involving King James connects with the 41st semi-prime number of days to the Antichrist's birthday, and also connects to the basketball president's birthday, and also connects to with the predicted slip and fall of Paul Simon, who sang about the Apollo mission on the date 119, as in Revelation 9:11. And the Mayflower hints at number 11. It was 9 days before the published The Shining by Stephen King. Okay. Which was on the 28th of the month, as in the number 28's winning score at the buzzer next to the Tower of Babel. Okay. The date of the published The Shining book was 128, G128. In the Greek concordance is the word the Ethiopian, like I mentioned, which hints at Barack Obama, because this is known through God's signs. And number 28's name, Hachimura, hints at Obama. Yeah, Hachimura hints at Obama. Believe it or not, it's true. And again, Japanimation, demonic possession. Obama attended the NBA Finals next to the Tower of Babel. The Raptors won the 2019 Finals against the Golden Gate Bridge team. And the demons will cross over the bridge. Simon's big hit, Bridge Over Troubled Water, into the earthly realm. The Golden Gate Bridge is 90 feet wide and 1.7 miles long, which hints at Obama, who was president from 09 to 17. So the Raptors won the 2019 Finals that Obama attended exactly 333 weeks before the perihelion of the third interstellar object on October 29th, 2025, which was 36 days, as in 666, before the three-pointer by player number 6th prime semi-prime number to begin the game. 36 is 6 times 6, but also 2 times 18, which is 6 plus 6 plus 6. And the 36th triangular number, which in a triangle of numbers, the last number in the 36th row is 666. And 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 all the way up to 36 equals 666. Anyway, this is at the third term of the Obama, who attended the game, or the finals, 333 weeks before the third interstellar object reached its perihelion, the symbolic date for the object, which means it's the closest date that it is to the sun. And that is it. That's a wrap. God bless. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. In the last days, many people who claim to be a follower of Christ will have spiritual experiences that are in reality demonic. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Do not listen to or follow the example of most quote-unquote Christians. Instead, follow the teachings of Jesus, which most quote-unquote Christians ignore. Like Jesus, you must surrender your life. Put nothing ahead of Jesus, your Lord. Like Jesus, you must lay down your life so that you may live. As Jesus said, one must die first, like a kernel of wheat going into the ground, in order to then grow and produce fruit. And like Jesus said, one must produce fruit, or else like a branch or a tree not producing fruit, they will be thrown into the fire. Jesus was speaking to quote-unquote Christians when he said this. One must die the self in order to be born again. And like Jesus said, one must be born again to enter the kingdom. Like Jesus, you must sacrifice your life for the sake of the coming kingdom. It means to do work that involves some form of sacrifice and risk. To have faith does not mean to intellectually agree. You need to demonstrate your faith through taking action. To have faith means to trust in God's promises. Taking action demonstrates trust and fear of the Lord. The primary reason that the wrath of God is coming upon America is quote-unquote Christians that do not get what I have just explained. The only reason a Christian is alive is in order to help other people become Christians and make it to the kingdom. Do not be deceived by those on the political left claiming to be quote-unquote Christians. There is no such thing as a Christian on today's political progressive left. Jesus said, "Do not think I have come to abolish or change any bit of the law or the prophets of the Old Testament Bible." In other words, the God of the Old Testament Bible is the exact same God of the New Testament Bible. It is essential that you learn about the God of the Bible and his ways. The God of the Old Testament Bible is looking to see who will fear him, and to fear God is not the same thing as quote-unquote revering or honoring God. Through Christ's ransom payment, a Christian is someone who has been redeemed and freed from slavery to sin and Satan. In response, a true Christian recognizes that their life in this world does not belong to them, and they become a willing slave to Jesus for the sake of the kingdom. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. And don't only put the link to this video or another video on this channel in comments sections of places you typically visit, but importantly, put the link to the video in places you never visit, where people who don't think like you visit. If you are a quote-unquote Christian, nothing in terms of an evangelism tool compares to this video with its prediction. It is a massive bag of gold. Beware of Jesus' warning through the quote-unquote Christian that did nothing with his bag of gold and was banished to hell. Also, read Ezekiel chapter 3 and 33 for this same warning. If you think you might be spending too much time watching videos instead of working and sacrificing for the kingdom through handing out flyers and potentially helping hundreds of people in the same length of time as a video, my flyer is filled with amazing information that people need to know right now, and it points people to the video channel. Now is not the time to be handing out typical evangelical tracts that are largely based in error anyway, such as, quote, Jesus loves you, unquote, for example. You can hand out the flyer on busy street corners, put them on car windshields in busy parking lots, and put them in mailboxes. Just send the file to your local print shop. You can download the file from the website. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, asteroidprediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the Odyssey.com or Rumble.com channel, and do it now in case you aren't able to later.